And there was only 6 seconds between what I was seeing and when it had happened. Okay, so that's one thing that my little pea brain cannot quite fathom.
The people who are watching this video on my YouTube channel, sorry for saying that, they'll be thinking, and I'm thinking, oh, Tom Hanks is such a nerd. He's a space nerd. You love space.
And that makes my head explode a little bit. That makes my head go boom. That's what I get.
Okay.
But, you know, as you said, I'm a space nerd. So what do you know?
Yeah, that's a great answer.
반갑습니다. 이승국입니다. 아주 특별한 기회가 생겨서 할리우드의 살아있는 전설 중 한 명, 배우 톰 행크스와 비대면으로 만남을 가질 수가 있었습니다. 평소와 달리 영화에 대한 이야기가 아니었던, 그래서 더 떨렸던 톰 행크스와의 대화 바로 시작합니다. 셋, 둘, 하나.
Okay, then I'll just officially start.
Let's go, man. Let's go. Let's
Wow.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's make it happen.
Wow. Okay. First thing first. It's a great pleasure and honor to even see you and talking to you, Mr. Tom Hanks. My name's Seunguk Lee from South Korea.
Nice to meet you. What a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And I have to say this, I usually get nervous or excited meeting stars, but this time somehow I got terrified even thinking of talking to you because you are the star I grew up watching. I've watched so many movies. So there will be moments during the 30-minute interview that my great brain goes off. So when that happens, please bear with me.
Okay. I'll cut you all the slack you need.
Thank you very much. Even in Korea, you are such a big name. The movies like Big, Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, Saving Private Ryan, Castaway, and Woody from Toy Story franchise, Catch Me If You Can, Da Vinci Code, Sully, The Post, Elvis, the list goes on. Every generation has their own favorite Tom Hanks movies. That's why I find this interview so intriguing because we are not here today to talk about your movie. This is not a movie.
Another thing, yeah.
Yeah. The Moonwalkers, A Journey with Tom Hanks, is not a movie. So if you encounter a person who doesn't know about this project and hasn't heard about anything about it, how would you like to introduce this project to that person?
Yeah, that's really an interesting question because I felt the same thing when I first walked into Lightroom in London. I heard it was a presentation. That's all I knew in a new kind of like immersive environment. Then having seen it, it took me about a minute and a half to realize that it was a much more participatory experience for anybody who walks into the room. We know what movies are. We decide we're going to see a movie. We sit down in a seat. It plays up in front of us. And movies we can carry around with us now. Lightroom and what the Moonwalkers is takes that experience and turns it into a very, very, very specific choice that the audience has to make. And that is to be in a specific place at a specific time to go to a specific environment, in this case, the moon. As I was talking to the very first time I met Richard and everybody from Lightroom and saw what they were doing, I said to them, you know, I think you guys could put the audience on the moon in a way that no one has ever been able to do on the planet Earth ever here in this environment. And not only put them on the moon, but give them the power to walk on the moon themselves because they can get up, go to the other side of the room, turn around and look back.
True.
Go to another part of the room and look at. They can go up top and look at it all down. So I kind of thought that it was the same effect as though 600 years ago, human beings said, I want to be inspired. So where can I go? I am going to go to a temple, cathedral, architectural site, a space, and I'm going to walk around and find the view, find the light, find the stained glass, find the joining of floor and ceiling and sky. And that sounds very highfalutin. I know that sounds like a pretty big deal. But so I viewed it as almost a generational leap in the audience storytelling experience. But it also ends up, I think, blowing open the whole concept of, dare I say it, narrative. So there, I saw this magnificent challenge then in order to involve the people that choose to come to it in something that is, on one hand, very specific. It's about 50 minutes long. It kind of like plays on a loop. You can walk in 20 minutes in and then walk, stay as long as you want. see it again. You could watch it in a linear fashion from beginning to end. But what you also then get to do is have the narrative and the emotion and the kind of like creative goal of the story simply to wash over you. And I think what's great about it is you come away with, if I was going to say, what do I hope the audience comes away from the Moonwalker? I would say of a brand new sensibility of what the moon means to you. I never thought I'd look up at the moon and think about it as the same way as this place of untapped, unending, unlimited curiosity. Some movies can do that. There's also a great painting can do that as well. Or as I said, a great temple can do that as well. Or a book that involves you in a whole life. So I just think it's a new artistic experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with you because I first heard about this project and they actually sent me the video of the whole exhibition, the Moonwalkers. So I watched it in my room with my computer monitor. So I thought I had the idea of what it is. Then they invited me to come to Lightroom Seoul. So I went into the room. So it was basically just a room, huge room. And the walls, the floor, those were the canvas for the exhibition. And it was, like you said, new sense of art. It's not about seeing, it's not about hearing, it's about feeling what it is to be in that room, filled with some new art form. For me, it was my first time going into the immersive art form. So thank you for producing such a great project for me. It was a really great experience.
Glad you like it. I'm glad you saw it. Yeah, it's as you know, it's very hard to explain it. You know what because essentially our brains are perfectly made in order to understand this two-dimensional, view of the world. There's a reason that movies and plays and prosceniums are always in this very specific kind of like border that we have. What happens then when you remove that border? And it goes as far as the eye can see. It becomes a different sort of experience. It just naturally involves more of your senses because when you are with other people, and you can go like this and see some other version of what of the story, it doesn't replace it. It actually just makes it even bigger. And the people that I know have seen it have said, well, the first time we saw it was. But the second time everybody sees it twice, in order to, in some ways, look at what they missed. And the truth is, I've seen it now, because we've worked on it for quite a while. I have never not watched it and seen something new that caught my eye or got some other glimmer of an idea. And I worked on the thing. I should know it better, but I still see something new that I didn't notice the first time, the times before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure people who watch the video and go try experience this one, they'll go like, oh, is it? Oh, so because every wall and floor has their own narrative at the same time. So it was interesting to like watching myself in the room, finding which wall is showing me the best scene at that time. So it was really interesting to realize, oh, this deliberate limitation of sight might be the key to what this Lightroom and the project is all about.
When this was happening in real time, in 1970, 71, 72, I went home and turned on the television, and it was Apollo 17. It was the last mission to the moon. I saw live as it was happening, two men on the moon. And I happen to have since met both those guys, Gene Cernan and Jack Schmidt, and they're walking on the moon. And the camera was mounted on an electric car that was beaming a signal just through an umbrella-like antenna that they just pointed at the planet Earth in the sky. And somehow all of this technological marvel was delivering to my house in Oakland, California, color video of what was happening on the moon. And there was only 6 seconds between what I was seeing and when it had happened. Okay, so that's one thing that my little pea brain cannot quite fathom. But then the fellow in Houston, Texas, who was operating movement of that camera, panned the camera lens over, tilted up into the sky to this fuzzy blob that was the planet Earth, and then adjusted the focus and the contrast so I could literally see on the video the cloud patterns of the planet that I was sitting on at the same time. And in my head, I wanted to run outside and wave my arms, at wherever the moon was, just so that I could say, see, I'm in this picture right now.
Yeah.
There's only three human beings that are not in this video. The two guys walking on the moon and the one guy that's floating around. And that blew my mind.
Uh-huh.
Now, you take that then and move that experience from essentially a video screen that's, kind of square,
mm-hmm.
and expand it so it is all around you. The sound comes from 1,000 speakers that are playing around you. The projection is crystal clear. I mean, you can even see on this poster that you have
mm-hmm.
If you look at the gold visor of that astronaut,
yeah, uh-huh.
you can see the reflection of the moon as he sees it, and you can see the shadow of the other astronaut who is taking the picture of him. Uh-huh. That's the clarity that exists here and that can only be found in one place, and that's on the moon, and can only be now experienced in its as best as we can make happen here mm-hmm. on the planet Earth in Lightroom Seoul. When I go back to London and just take it in, people mm-hmm. come in and they lay down, they lay down on the floor.
Uh-huh.
They can sit in chairs, they can stand, they can move up, they can move down, they can go anywhere they want to in it. But one of the best ways of doing it is in the first time, just lay down, and it happens over you like you're underneath the night sky. Have you ever been would you finally go and see a really very famous painting mm-hmm. in a museum?
Yeah. You've
read about it, and you find yourself sometimes just sitting on a bench, and you just stay there. And you just watch it and watch it and watch it. This is the next generation of that experience.
Oh.
To just sit and take in something as it lands,
mm-hmm.
on you.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you about your favorite spot in the Lightroom, but listening to what you just said, I'll try lying down on the floor when I go to the next time for the experience. Okay. I'll definitely try that. And I think probably by now, the people who are watching this video on my YouTube channel must have been realized that, sorry for saying that, they'll be thinking, and I'm thinking, oh, Tom Hanks is such a nerd. He's a space nerd. You love space. Actually, the first thing that popped up in my head when I heard about this project and this interview opportunity was why? Among all the things you could talk about, why does Tom Hanks want to talk about space with such a great experience exhibition? Then I researched some of the interview you did for this project and your past interviews, and I realized you really love space and you've been in love with the space since you were a little boy. So mm-hmm. how did that all happen, and how did you keep your passionate love for the space all along?
To me, the space program has always been about the future. It was always been about what going into space was going to mean for us. The accomplishment, the figuring out how to do it, the first landing on the moon. Mm-hmm. And look, that's a moment of human history that has a definite before and after. Mm-hmm. I was alive before human beings walked on the moon, and then one day, in the wink of an eye, I was part of the generation that mm-hmm. had experienced both. You only been alive after people have been on the moon, so you don't know what it was like.
Yeah,
prior to saying, is it possible? All right. When I was a kid, every newspaper, every class that's at school, science, the study of mythology, art, politics, current events, the space program reached across all of those.
Oh.
There's a reason the Apollo program is named after one of the Greek gods.
Mm-hmm.
There is a story to be told there that is as epic as anything as Homer mm-hmm. ever came up with. Okay. There was also a contest going on because it was, we have to do this before John F. Kennedy said, land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth before this decade is out. Oh. And I could look at the calendar and say, oh my God, it's 1964. We only have 6 years in order to figure this out. Uh-huh. We hope the Soviet Union doesn't do it before we do, Mm-hmm. So there was that contact. But then along with it came, in my mind, what do we do next? What happens next? No one goes to a place for the first time, picks up a few rocks, and then doesn't bother to go back again. If you go to the seashore as a kid, You pick up some rocks, you bring them home, and you know what you want to go to the seashore again. You want to go back to what that place is.
True.
So after the Apollo program closed down, of course, there was the space shuttle and there was other stuff that goes on. And all of it I knew was some brand of stepping stones leading us to whatever the future is going to be. And now here we are. The Artemis program is going to go back and prove once again that we can get to the moon and we can get home. And it is now no longer just the realm of a very specific mindset of getting it done. It is now open to everybody. Going into space now has been done by both genders, men and women. It has been done by all heritage of the earth, people of color, people from different cultures, people of different faiths have gone up into space now. So now it is actually something that any human being, you or anybody watching your YouTube channel, can just say, I am 11 years old and I'm interested in this stuff. I can actually start educating myself now and training myself now. And I could be perhaps the 832nd human being to go to the moon and walk on the moon. And that could be something I can do myself right now. You will not be the first. No, you will not be the first person to land on it. But what is the difference between you and being the first and being the 832nd person to walk on the moon? Absolutely nothing is the difference between the two of them. Because you will both be going to a place where human beings are not supposed to be able to live, and yet human beings has figured out a way in order to do so. And look, I'm an actor, I'm a storyteller, I'm a geek. I don't know, my math is terrible, but my imagination is constantly stirrable. I can remain curious about what that means to the individuals. You know, we've met, and the crew, when they start talking about this kind of stuff, they sound just like you and me. Why do you want to go? Oh, because when I was a kid, I knew they were going, and I thought if anybody's going to, I want to do that themselves. All that requires, I think, from any of us is the curiosity in order to say, I wonder what that would be like. And if next time you go, and if you lay down, if you lay on the floor and take it all in, if you have a little bit more of that question to yourself, what it would be like for me to go, not for us as a human being. What would it be like for me to go? I mean, me to stand there on the moon like that astronaut right there. Guess what? You'll only find out if you go yourself, and you'll be able, and you can if you want to.
And for the last couple of years in Korea, the topic of science, space, and journey to the space expeditions, all those topics and themes have been gaining popularity among the people. So many Korean people, especially young people, will go there and experience it. So you constantly talked about this curiosity and thinking about the future. But I heard that you were originally focused more on the Apollo program, which happened in the late 60s and 70s. But during the production, it got expanded to include today and the future of the space expedition. So with this expansion of the theme of the project, did your view or the meaning of Apollo program also got affected?
I have never stopped learning something new about the Apollo program ever. And I read about it, you think of it, eventually you got to top out, right? But it comes back to something that one of the astronauts said to me. The astronauts, the Apollo spacewalkers themselves, they had a lot of stuff to do. They were very, very busy. You know, they didn't have a lot of time to just kind of like look about and ponder. But Gene Cernan, who was the last man to be on the moon, I asked him, I said, how often were you able just to take a moment to yourself when you were out on the moon? And he told me that every chance he got, sometimes only for 7 seconds or 30 seconds, he would flip up his gold visor and look up into the sky. And he said, I could see on Earth that it was getting dark in London, but it was lunchtime in Houston. And I think, man, if I was on the moon, all I would do was look up at the Earth. But then the other thing he said, and then he would shift his gaze and it would look into what he called the time-space continuum. meaning that where he was looking, there was nothing between him and eternal space except the visor of his space helmet.
Wow.
We cannot do this on the planet Earth. You know, at nighttime we can look up at the stars. That's got to be a clear night. But we still have atmosphere. We have oxygen. We have plasma. We have we have all the elements of the planet Earth between us. He had nothing between him and the deepest reaches of outer space, and that makes my head explode a little bit. That makes my head go boom. And even though they were very specific white guys that went and walked on the moon, they were that type of pioneer. They were that type of explorer. And one of them, Al Bean, who was on Apollo 12, he actually turned his life over to art. He painted about being on them. Other guys have written certainly memoirs and some have written poetry about being up on the moon. I garnered this from their voyage, that they came back even greater than who they were when they went. What were they changed by? They were changed certainly by the experience. But that experience could also be a depression. I mean, what do you do with your life after you walked on the moon? You know, what's going to be impressive after that, you know? But they came back just as driven, just as curious, just as competitive, you know, as they had ever been before they went. And in that regard, going to the moon is like a chrysalis. It's like a compression of human experience. You know, once you see Paris, you're impressed with Paris for the rest of time. You know, once you see the Grand Canyon, you never lose that experience. So what Apollo always meant to me was the combination of, number one, proving that it's humanly possible. Certainly, that's no small feat. Doing it first, which is loaded with danger, you know, but then we went back. Human beings returned another 5 times.
True.
And every time they did, they were looking for that next thing that had yet to be discovered. So in a lot of ways, for me, the Apollo program, locked in history as it is, even locked in nostalgia as it is still one of the best examples of what human beings can do once they prove that it's possible to do in the first place. That's what I get.
Okay.
But, you know, as you said, I'm a space nerd. So what do you know?
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I think this is probably my last question because we are already running out of time. I just heard so much insight and your knowledge and your passion for this project and Moon. So it's already enough for me to learn about this project. But when you actually go into the Lightroom and watch the Moonwalkers, we again hear your voice during the whole exhibition of 50 minutes. And from that voice, we not only got information about what we need to see during the exhibition, we also feel some unique intimacy we usually feel from your characters in various movies. It's because you tell a story like it's your private feelings, private thoughts, just like you just told me these stories. So when you're writing your lines and recording those lines, what was your focus to bring out for this project?
You know, I will tell you that it ends up being the wonder of being involved in a story that you are familiar with. But as you talk about it, as Richard and everybody at Lightroom, you know, they expanded it to much greater horizons that I originally envisioned. I would have probably been satisfied with just this kind of like museum piece. They did not see it that way. They saw it as, well, what about the future? This is not about the past. They saw it as being about right now, the present, because you can walk out. We can walk out at nighttime and look up at the moon right now and say they landed there, 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 and there. And so we can go out and experience the moon right now, as human beings always have experienced the moon, with the knowledge that we've been up there. Okay, so that's right now, past, present. Then they brought in the concept of the future. To me, the future is the most exciting aspect of what the story is. So when we were doing the narrative, we were coming up with how is it that we're going to talk about. I recalled something that Dave Scott told me, and we also talked about it with the Artemis crew as well, is that when it comes to getting to the moon, the actual requirements are mathematical. If you could bear with me now, it's math, you know, okay?
Yeah.
Getting to the moon is some combination of 2 times 2 equals 4. Dave Scott told me, he said, look, Tom, if you took a hammer and threw it in the sky in the right direction with the right amount of force behind it, that hammer would travel all the way to the moon. Gravity would pull it around the back side of it and send it right back in the direction that it came from. And I say, you mean if I'm in the right place at the right time, I could catch that hammer that I threw around the moon, you know? He said, well, you could, you know, it'll probably burn up in the atmosphere, but if you had a hot pad on your head, you could probably grab it like that. And so that took my concept of going to the moon and blew it wide open, because the math takes care of itself, right?
Yeah.
2 times 2 equals 4. But what does the human being construe in that same very, very mission? I'll tell you this one. You know who Charles Lindbergh was? He flew across the Atlantic, right? In 1927. Jim Lovell, who was on Apollo 8 and who I played in Apollo 13, he told me that Apollo 8 was they just flew around the moon and came back in December of 1968. They didn't land. They just said, oh, well, let's fly around the moon. Let's work out the 2 times 2 equals 4 part of it, show that's possible, and come back. And before they launched, Charles Lindbergh, the famous aviator, came and had lunch with the crew, you know, like 2 days before they were going to go. And the crew said, Mr. Lindbergh, are you going to be coming back in July for when Apollo 11 launches? Because they'll actually be making the landing. And Charles Lindbergh said to them, the landing is not as important. You guys are actually doing the thing that should be impossible for human beings. Because these 3 guys were going to be the first examples of human tissue, brains, blood, sinew, thought, that was going to leave the gravitational pull of the planet Earth and enter the realm of the moon, meaning the gravity of the moon would pull them around, just like that hammer I was talking about. The moon would hold them in its sway, and then they would come home. So in the great history of humankind, it's the first 3 guys that showed it was possible. The first 3 people who truly were, are you ready for this? Interplanetary space travelers. 3 guys. They were the very, very first. So without them, nothing else happens. Nothing else happens. And if they don't do it first, guess what? Artemis doesn't go.
True.
You and I don't have that opportunity to be the 832nd person to walk on the moon. So that sense of awe and whimsy is what Richard and Nick and everybody else at the other names that really should, you know, always be on the poster for this. They were able to draw out, I think, that X factor of why does it still hold this incredible sway? And I'd say this, because without us, without human beings looking up at the moon and wondering about ourselves, the moon is just a dead hunk of rock that's floating around in space. The moon requires human beings like us to observe it and to see it and ask questions. Otherwise, it's just a thing going round and round and round and round and round, and it doesn't mean anything. We end up defining what these places are by our own sensibility of why, what, and how. Now, knowing full well that, guess what? If we want to go there, first thing we have to do is figure out that 2 times 2 equals 4.
Yeah.
After that, it's all just, you know, a bunch of sweat and luck and hard work.
Okay. I hate to always say that, but it's time to wrap things up. So thank you for your passionate answers to my stupid questions. And I'm pretty sure many space nerds and many people who got interested in the space in Korea, they will go visit, and I'm pretty sure they'll be amazed and will be thanking you for this project, because as far as I know, Lightroom is only in London and Seoul. So this is the only place to experience this special exhibition. So again, thank you for your great producing ability. And we'll be rooting for you both in this area and your movie industry area for the rest of your life. Thank you very much.
You're very kind. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Bye.
네, 그렇게 제작자 톰 행크스와의 대화가 마무리되었습니다. 더 문워커스, 톰 행크스와 함께하는 여정은 현재 라이트룸 서울에서 진행되고 있고요. 9월 30일까지 계속 이어질 예정이니 관심 있으신 분들은 검색해보시길 추천드립니다. 영상 재밌게 보셨다면 구독하고 좋아요 눌러주시고 댓글 다는 거 잊지 마시길 바라며 저는 다음번 다른 영상으로 인사드리도록 하겠습니다. 지금까지 저는 천재이승국의 이승국이었습니다. 감사합니다. 바이바이.